So about the scripting, actually before we look at the scripting, let me show you a different config setting there. Well, not config, but camera setting. Actually have this, it's called Drive Canon SLR Manual Focus, which is a really cool thing. Let me enable live view there again. Live, how live is this view? Not very fast, but works. So if I change this here, the focus, but let me actually to do that, I need to put my lens into the autofocus mode so that the camera would be able to control the focus on my lens. Actually, let me try to do it like that so you could see both at the same time, the live view and the manual focus setting. So if I change the manual focus setting to something like it has near 1 to 3 and it has far 1 to 3. If I change it to like near 3, now if you could see the change in the live view. Oh yeah, I'm already at the nearest focus, so let me go to the far 3. Far 1 to 3 is just the amount it's going to do the change for, like 1 is the smallest and 3 is the largest. So far 3, let's click on that. You can probably hear the sound of the focus moving. So you can control the focus on your camera remotely, like that. So we are at the furthest now. Let's go back to the near. I don't know if it's noticeable on the live view, but you can probably see that my hand in here right now is more in focus than something that's up close, right? So let's put something up close there, maybe. I actually have the Raspberry Pi. It's pretty out of focus now, right? Okay, so let's go with the near. And that was a visible change, right? And it's getting more and more in focus. And now we're at the nearest focus setting. And let me try to show you this with the camera. So image the camera. Yeah. Should take this off. If you can't see, that's in. Sorry, I'm all with no wires here because I need to tether the iPhone image to my computer, so I'm not having it plugged into the Raspberry Pi. No, but I have it plugged into the laptop. So if you look in here at this window, it contains the focus setting. Actually, let me go for the near. I'm already nearest for the far 3. If you see when I'm clicking that, that's far 2. Let's go far 3. It rotates down there. Like, how good you can see that. Let me try to get it up close. I'm already on the furthest one. You can see the infinity sign in there. And let's go for the near 3. So as you can see, it moves a lot, but if you go for the like a near 2, it moves a little. And if I go like near 1, it moves a tiny bit, just the tiniest bit. So this is all cool. You can control focus remotely, right? But what about it? Well, you can do interesting stuff with that, like it expands your creative arsenal. You can go and create time lapses with a variable focus, like I've actually did, and I have a time lapse like that on my channel here. So on my YouTube channel. Let me put the camera back. So that's a pretty interesting feature, especially combined with other automation. If you automate your time lapses and you use a variable focus there, that's a pretty interesting stuff. So if you go into scripts, well, actually, let's take a look at it like that, so we could fit more stuff in the screen. Have the list scripts button, which will list me the scripts that I've already created, and I have a bunch of them. Probably the most interesting will be the day-to-night Canon, but actually I have the new script 22 that I just created recently. I create a new script. Let's say new script cache 23, right? New script 23. So it shows me this starter that is not saved. If I click save, the script will be saved. If I go to list scripts now, I will see my new script 23 there. So what do we have here? We have just like one step, and when I've been creating a new one, I think I had the help in there. Now we didn't. Why didn't I have the help screen? But anyway, let's try this again. New script, new 24. Did I not? No, I thought I'm showing the help on the creation of a new script, but anyway, I don't. Even if I don't, let's go back to the new 23. We have one step here, and you can add more steps by clicking add step, and you can see those steps have numbers like 0, 1, 2, and they have the arrows to move the steps around. Let me change this to capture and this to set property. So if I want to capture, then set property, then wait, I can click on the down arrow on the wait, and it goes below the capture, and then again it goes below wait property, set property. So these are the steps in the script. Then I have save, run, and stop, and trace, and all the other settings, but we'll look at those in a moment. Let's just look at what we have here. We have those on the left. We have the number of step, up-down buttons, and the delete button, which allows you to delete the step. Let's say I delete the first step, capture. Then you have the if condition. It's just a conditional for the step, whether it's going to be running or not. And we'll go back to that later. And then we have the type of a step, actually, and some parameters. So if the type of a step is, for example, capture, then you don't need no parameters. It's just capture and like that. So in order for this not to, let me go to the big screen. And if I change it to something like wait, you need an amount of wait in milliseconds. Let me just have the one step for now. So this is the wait, and you have the parameter for the milliseconds for amount to wait. And you have wait cam. This is wait for camera event. This is something the GPhoto2 library supports. It's a wait for camera event, and it allows you to wait for several types of camera events. This is a useful feature that would be nice to have, but it kind of works badly in GPhoto2 library. In my experience, at least, it didn't work very well with my camera. Why do you need this? Why you might need this? It's when you have an option to trigger a capture on the camera, and this operation is blocking. It means that it starts capturing, and nothing else, no next step is happening. Like the GPhoto2Server issues a command via GPhoto library to the camera to make a capture, and until the capture is finished and the result is stored, the command is executing, and everybody, all those chain of software is just waiting for this command to finish. There are, however, different things. Like you can have a setting where the set property, the camera property, there's like manual focus or something, remote release actually. Yeah, in the remote release you can tell it to just like half press the button or full press the button. If we actually go to the camera settings here and we look at this remote release, what it has, well, this is none, press half, press full, release half, release full, immediate, and stuff like that. I don't even know all of those, what do they mean, but that's what the camera supports. So if you go with the press full, this will trigger, yeah, as you just heard, this will trigger a shot, but it will return immediately, even if I say, let me change the shutter speed to something really long, like 5 seconds, right? Why didn't it work? Try again. Worked from a second. Yeah, so sometimes Wi-Fi, the flimsy Wi-Fi might lead to things like that. Yeah. Why did I have the remote? Oh yeah. So I click on the press full, and immediately it went there. Oh, actually, it never released. I had to release full first. So yeah, if you use those settings, press full. Now this is more complicated to use because you have to remember to do the release then, and then set it to none, because it's probably none by default, even despite it. I don't actually have to set it to none. If I just click refresh, it would probably reload here. It would probably give me the none. But I didn't notice actually if that was a shutter speed of 5 seconds, was it? If I go for the capture. Yeah, so you can see the capture, it's busy until the capture is done, and then it releases. I'm still not sure the shutter speed was set to 5 seconds, because that sounded like faster than, let me try 10 seconds there. If I go for the capture now, yeah, now I can hear it's taking a while. Now the shutter is working for 10 seconds. It's open. While it's open, you can see this button capture stays disabled. Now it has finished the capturing, now it has finished the saving, and it has released, the operation has unblocked. But if I go with this remote release and I just say press full, that was it. I've pressed full. Maybe I should have pressed half before the press full, because oh yeah, sorry, the press full was already in effect. It was just waiting for those 10 seconds. Let me release full, and now again I do the press full. This operation returned right away, but camera is right now is busy. It's capturing. And if I do the release full, it can probably release, but the camera isn't done capturing. Oh, now it's done capturing, and now it's done saving. So the camera might be busy because this operation is not blocking. It's returning right away. Like it pressed the button and it went ahead. So if you try to do something else with the camera at the same time, like telling it to capture again, this will fail because it can't do 2 shots at the same time while it's already shooting. So you might want a step where it waits for the camera event, and the camera event can be capture done or file edit. Because the capture done doesn't mean that it's already saved, it just finished the capturing, but not has finished saving a file, for example, or any event. But this all is pretty flimsy, and it also takes a parameter where it tells you for how long maximum time it will be waiting. So there is that thing, but if you have to use it, it means that you're doing something complicated and tricky, and you might run into issues. Because when you try to execute several commands at the same time on the camera that's busy, GPhoto2 library isn't always great at handling this. It might crash, and you will have to restart the whole GPhoto2 server. So it will restart automatically, but the way I configured it in my Raspberry Pi. But still, it's not nice if things crash. So I'm not really using the wait for camera event too much. Most important thing that you have here is the set property. It's actually telling the camera to do something, well, other than capturing, but you can still do capture with it as well. But you can change focus, like where we had this Canon manual focus, and you could put a value here, but I don't know which value to put. Like what this 1000 doesn't make sense here, right? So again, if you look at those configs here, manual focus, you can see on the left you have the 0, 1.2, so all of them are numbered. Like near 1 is 0, near 2 is 1, near 3 is 2, none is 3. Far 1 is 4, and far 3 is 6. So if I want the far 3, I just put the value 6 there, right? So let's go to the scripts, and let me do just that. I say let the script just turn the camera to far, and then turn it far 3, and then turn it to near 3. What's the manual focus? So it's going to oscillate basically left and right. Near 3 was 2, right? Because we had near 1 is 0, near 2 was 1, and near 3 was 2. Let me save this, and let me add a wait in between those operations, actually for 1 second in between them, and 1 second after the first one, because it's going to repeat itself. Let us take a look at this like that. So this is our script. We save it, and then we run it. And let's see anything happening on the camera, which is a bit weird I click stop. Yeah, I've actually stopped that. I go to trace running script. It will tell me which events is it executing. The drive for the manual focus for some reason doesn't work. I have a script step, and I can see in the button, I can see the error, camper set, blah blah blah, GPhoto error. So there's an error happening, and this might be because of another issue. Like, this is something that you encounter, can only figure out while you're actually working with the GPhoto2 and experimentally, basically, is that you have to tell it to open the viewfinder. Yes, viewfinder, and you have to set it to open, and let me look up which value is open, because otherwise it does not allow you to control focus if your viewfinder isn't open. So it's just true or false, right? Actually, it seems like I had my viewfinder open, so I don't know why the setting didn't work. R3, okay. So let's go back to the scripts, and the viewfinder was supposed to be set to on, so basically this would be true value. And let's run it again. It tells me that there's an error on step 1. I don't actually understand right now why doesn't this work. There was probably also something else, like the manual focus mode that I was supposed to set. Might actually, you need to figure it out later. Anyway, SLR autofocus. But it's working on the settings page, so which is a little bit weird. Like, if I'm doing it from here, you can see that it's working. I change something like a manual focus. Viewfinder set to on. Oh, actually it should be 1. The value should be 1 for on. And if you look at this part here, like it tells you, if I put it to off, the value becomes 0. If I put it to on, the value becomes 1. So that's how it's supposed to work. So here I don't put it to true, I put it to 1, and I changed the property that was supposed to be viewfinder. So if I do now save and run, I don't think that was the issue though, because your viewfinder was already open. I opened it on the settings page. But it's good to have this in your script anyway, because next time you run the script, your viewfinder might be in a different state, depending on what you've been doing with the camera. And yeah, camera property set gives me an error, and I'm not sure why. Let me try a different property. Let me try, for example, a shutter speed. Shutter speed, yeah, shutter speed 6 is supposed to be some valid value, because we have 0 to 52 shutter speeds. And now I have errors only on the step 3, where they have the manual focus control again. And like I said, I will try to figure it out. Actually, I might have a Nikon focus control. I have a Nikon focus control, but not the Canon. The focus MF selection, Canon, the focus single server. I'm not sure if I have to set those up again. And on the Nikon I had a completely different settings, so yeah, I'm not having a Nikon plugged in. Canon focus control, yeah, that's the script that I have. So it's setting the I'm sorry, I don't have to set it to those numbers. I have to, use the actual values, like near 3. So if I run this, yeah, this works. And finally, yeah, you can see the tracing, how it works. It highlights with a green frame the current step that you're executing. So this focus control is more complicated because it's already doing some shooting, and it's if you look at the script there, it's in the if condition has a loop count equals 0, double equals. It's difference between the equal check and assignment. Like if you say loop count 1 equals 0, it means that you are assigning, and if you need to check, it's a programming scene. So yeah, the scripting part basically requires you to know, well, a little bit details about the scripting, or it is good if you have some programming experience. You don't actually have to have that experience. You can look up how the other scripts are written and just memorize a couple of tricks, so to speak, and a couple of ways to do things. But otherwise, yeah, this might get complicated because scripting is basically programming. Yeah, this has, you know, like the visual approach to it, where you have a button to add a step, you have drop downs to select things, but then you have to enter those values like this near 3. You have to enter it precisely as it appears in the config, and you have to put those little apostrophes to the left and right. This is like single quote characters, because this has to be a string value, and yeah, if you miss one of those or you could put an extra space in there, it's going to result in error because it's not going to find corresponding value. Like we had in the previous example, where I put a value 6, which was not a string to begin with, it was an integer, and then it didn't actually didn't recognize the value. Actually weird, I still had some errors there. Camera busy. Yeah, camera busy exception, that's what I've been talking about. Like you can trigger this focus, but it takes time for it to actually turn that focus, and because of that I'm having no waits here. Like after I have the focus set to near 3 zone, I'm waiting for 2 seconds for this to actually happen. And if I get the camera busy exceptions, it means that 2 seconds are not enough, that I need to wait for more, and this is something that you have to figure out empirically. So this is how the scripting looks like, and let's take a look at day to night scripts. That's the one that I used to create a day to night time lapses, which will automatically change the brightness of change the exposure. Actually, you can see here that exposure, it means just the shutter speed. So I'm basically setting here you can see the current shutter speed. I'm setting to the camera properties exposure there, and when the exposure, there is a check there, if the exposure is below, it's time to switch, it's increasing it, and then yeah, it's setting the property. There must be the set property somewhere. Actually I might have just changed that to set variable here, which was supposed to actually be set property. Yeah, like that. So camera prop choices exposure. This is cam prop choices is the cam prop is a special variable that I inject there to reference latest, not the latest, the current camera property. Like if I have the autofocus here, that's what is going to reference. And this was supposed to be not the autofocus, but the exposure, shutter speed, I mean. So this was supposed to be shutter speed, and then it has the choices, because it depending on what is it. If it's you know, the 0, 1 on off property, this doesn't have the choices. But if it has, if it's the selection, like for shutter speeds, you saw those options, and like for autofocus you saw options like near 3. That's one of the choices there, and the choice has a number, the index there, and near 3 had like 6. So if you put the number 6 here for the cam prop choices, that would select that option. And that's it for the shutter speed in this example. I'm having a shutter speed in the variable exposure. I set it initially to some value, like I check if the loop count equals 0. So this is the very first loop, because we always count from 0. Yeah, that's what programmers do. Geek stuff. So if loop count equals 0, this means only on the very first loop. I set the exposure variable to 40, and then below I have checks for average brightness of last 5 shots, and I will probably explain this script in details later. And the point is, like if it's time to switch brightness up, I check that if the lighting difference is below some value and the exposure is not maxed. Why did you do that? Selection on the iPhone is not very easy to do. If the exposure is not maxed out, let me scroll to the... Oh, come on. I want to scroll to the right. Please, can you do that? No? Why can't you do that? iPhone's sometimes giving me a headache as well. Alright, now I can do this. If exposure is below 50, it's basically, I have like 52 for the latest selection, which is the 1/4000th of a second. So I didn't want to go below like 1/1000th of a second. So if exposure is not that, I'm assigning this result of this scene to the TT switch variable, which is just means times to switch. So if it's time to switch, then I increase the exposure and set up a cooldown, because I don't want to change the exposures every time. So I have a cooldown there, like you have to do at least 6 more loops, so like 6 more shots in your time lapse before you can adjust the exposure. So the whole point of this script is to, let me try to explain this. So when you have bright day and you shoot on day to night, the brightness of your images, actually, if you just shoot them with the exposure that you have, with the shutter speed, with a constant shutter speed, it would go exponentially down. So what you want to do there is, after you have shot several shots, like say 5 shots, and you recorded the brightnesses, and then you average the brightness and say, okay, the average brightness of the first shot is some value X. Then once you do again next 5 shots, you average the brightness and say, okay, the average brightness of those 5 shots is is different, let's say, from the previous 5, like in certain value. Then you do more and more shots, and as you do them, you constantly calculate the average brightness of your last 5 shots. Why do I do the last 5 shots and not just one current shot? Because if you have some event, I don't know, if you're shooting in traffic and at a certain point the headlights hit your camera, or some reflection of the headlights hit your camera, you will have one very bright shot here, there, maybe 2. But you don't want to events like that to influence your time lapse too much. You have to average it out. So depending on what is the difference between in time between your shots, what's the interval, you might want to average from 5 or 10 or even 15 shots. Again, depending on the interval that you have in between your shots. So once you average it out, you know, okay, so now I'm having the average brightness 10% below the initial brightness. So I want to up the exposure one step up. And the result is that if that's what the script does, this allows me to get the images that are exposed like this, and then exposure goes down exponentially, then it jumps up because I've increased the shutter speed, decreased the shutter speed actually, so made it slower. And it again goes down and again jumps up, and I have this sawtooth pattern in my resulting images, but none of the images are, you know, badly underexposed, or I would say underexposed at all. It might be just a little bit underexposed, or some of them might be a little bit over and some might be under, depending on how I shot those few first initial shots. But then I apply a deflickering software that just fixes those, you know, those jumps, and I have a nice day to night or night to day time lapse where every image is within a proper range, dynamic range. It's not severely underexposed or severely overexposed, as you would get with if you just use the constant shutter speed and constant aperture, etc., constant ISO. So I actually variate the shutter speed. You can variate the aperture or ISO or whatever, or all of 3 of them if you wanted to, depending on how complicated you want to make a script. And it's totally possible to also include the focus change within the script itself. So you can have a nice day-to-night time lapse, and after you've done, let's say you calculated, okay, I'm going to make a 30 frame per second movie in the end. So 30 shots will result in 1 second of my video, right? So after shooting for 10 seconds, I want everything to go into, you know, into the blur. I want to defocus. So I'm setting there the if condition if the loop count is above 300. So after the 10 seconds of the resulting video, basically, after I've shot 300 shots, I'm going to, on every, I don't know, 5th shot or every 10th shot, I'm going to turn the focus a little bit, like do the near one or stuff like that. And this will eventually defocus my time lapse. And And I don't want to do it on every shot, because even if I call the near one, the smallest increment there, it's going to take, I don't remember the exact value, but I think it was somewhere around 100, maybe even below 100, somewhere around 50 shots for you to completely turn it from the far. Well, if you shoot in time lapses and it's like a landscape shot, you probably focused somewhere far, maybe even into the infinity. Still, it will like 50 shots to completely bring it to the nearest value. So 50 shots will be less than 2 seconds, right? And maybe you don't want to defocus it in like 1, 2, and you completely maybe want to spread this over 5 seconds. So what you can do is you take a loop count there, you take a reminder of a division by say 3, 5, or 10, and if that reminder of division is 0, then only then conditionally you turn this focus. So you don't turn the focus every shot, every loop basically. Then you only turn it every 3rd or every 5th or every 10th shot. This way you can have a fine-grained control of the focus or anything else that you want in there. Maybe you want to experiment with adjusting the aperture, for example, and you can compensate for the aperture by upping up the exposure, by changing the aperture just to have this different effect on the lighting that it has, or on the sharpness or whatever you're interested there, or on the depth of field, for example. So this all can be automated using this scripting capability. It's complicated, it's not easy to master, and it takes a bit of a trial and error and time, but it's not impossible. It's nothing that that you would be unable to do. Eventually, I guess, given maybe not you specifically, but even with help, probably people could help you do that. And I will make a different video on this particular script probably, and explain a little bit more about the scripting, because there are some things there that are not clear. But let me share the iPhone screen again. It's not easy to figure out. Like I had this script with the tracing, and in this bottom part I have this. Like, what is this? This is actually you have the name of your script. It tells you at which step it is currently. It tells you how many loops have passed and how many total steps have passed. And you have variables which you can use in your script, like current step, a loop count. The loop count is probably the most interesting one. It tells you the current loop. And again, like I said, if you want to do something on the very first loop, you check if the loop count equals 0, or if you want to do something after this 300th shot, you can check if the loop count is above 300, stuff like that. Total steps passed, probably not very interesting. It's basically loop count minus 1 multiplied by number of steps you have in the script plus the current step. And we have a helper there, and the helper is good for doing more complicated stuff like arrays. It can allow you to create an array, and I'm using arrays in here to capture several shots and average their to store their average brightnesses in the array. And then when I'm done capturing, like say 5 shots, I take all the values from the array and I average those out. There's a light meter. That's an important utility. If you look how I use it, it's the one that actually gives me the lighting of a shot. But yeah, here it is. The light meter, get for sum, and the captured file. There is again a special variable there, captured file. So once you've done a capture, come on, why can't I select yeah, once you're done capture, okay, I'm not going to attempt it again. You will have the name, the complete path actually of the captured file written in this special variable. So the light meter, get for sum, will take this file name, take its thumbnail, and calculate the average brightness of that thumbnail. You can do it for the whole file, but for the whole file it will be more computationally intensive, so it might take more time. And that's why I'm using the get it for the thumbnail. Thumbnails are already good enough. I mean, you don't have to have the perfect lighting. You need just the average anyway. And that's point is that these are the special things like helper and light meter, which I should have help there describing like what the methods are, because I guess I thought I had a help there, but currently you have no way of knowing other than looking at my script that it has the method get for sum because otherwise how would you know which method to type? Unfortunately, I don't have some nice features like a code completion here. Evaluated condition is the last condition that was in this if statement. In current step is 6, so basically this, if you scroll to step 6, this condition was evaluated and it has nothing, so it's by default considered to be true, and evaluated condition is true there. Camera property, the last access camera property, and this was in my case EOS remote release, so basically, yeah, remote release. Current time stop, loop start time. Current time and loop start time are very important things to have, because if you're shooting a time lapse, you want all of your shots to be done at equal intervals, like every 10 seconds, for example. So, but what does the script actually do? You know, it has a lot of steps. It presses the capture, then you say you have your exposure set at 1 second. So for 1 second, it blocks to wait for the shot to be done, and then maybe for half a second, it waits for the camera to store the file and return control back to the GPhoto2. And then it also might do, you know, this average calculation, etc., which might take another second. So for 2.5 seconds you've been doing stuff, but then you need to wait. But how long do you need to wait? I mean, if you put a fixed wait there, but you change the shutter speed, so now it's 1 second, then it's 2, then it's 4 seconds, this will make your shots happen at increasingly longer intervals. And it's not very consistent of how fast things are happening. Like the light calculation is happening on a Raspberry Pi, and the Raspberry Pi is also serving you Wi-Fi and stuff. So it might calculate it faster in some cases, and slower in other cases. These fluctuations aren't big, but they are there. So how do you even things out? Well, you take the current timestamp and subtract from it the loop start time. This way you know how much time until the current step has happened, has been taken by the script. And that's what I do in the script. If you look below, you see the throttle wait. I take 8 and 5 seconds, basically 8,500 milliseconds, and I subtract the current timestamp minus loop start time from that. So, and this is a wait value then for me. How much do I need to wait so that every loop would happen in 8.5 seconds, basically intervals. And there is of course a possibility that this throttle wait will be negative. Means if we already took more than 8 seconds by now, more than 8.5 seconds, then the current timestamp minus the start timestamp will be more than 8,050, right? So, and if it will be, let's say 10,000, we took 10 seconds so far, 8,050 minus 10 seconds will result in minus 1,500, sorry, minus 1,500. So if I put a negative value into the wait operation is actually smart. It's done to just do nothing. If you tell it to wait 0 or less than 0 milliseconds, it just doesn't do the wait. It returns immediately. So, but this will be of course also a problem. So I have the variables here, and if I look, I actually didn't run this script. Let me run this particular script then, so I would be able to see those variables. You would be able to look at the throttle weight, and if the throttle weight becomes negative, you will know that some of your steps are not executing at the proper time. Okay, and the capture doesn't work because my camera fell asleep. One of the problems is that camera is eventually falling asleep after a certain time out while you don't do anything to it. Try to disconnect and reconnect to the camera. Whoops. Okay, let me also turn the camera off and on again, because that usually helps. You know, like they say it in the IT crowd, have you tried turning it off and on again? So back to the scripts. I wanted to share the data night at Canon, and I'm going to run it, and I'm going to click trace the running script, and trace shows me that current step is in this throttle wait. It's already executing, and in the beginning it should be the one step that takes the most of your time probably. And I can see below here in my variables dump, when I'm doing the tracing, this variable's dump is constantly updating me with the variable values. It says the throttle weight is around 5 seconds right now. And on the next step it was around 3 seconds because autofocus has kicked in. And by the way, when you're shooting time lapses, never use autofocus, of course, always use manual focus. And this way you can see if the throttle weight is suddenly becoming negative, and you can actually do another check for that. Let us just do just that right now. So let's stop the script. Let's make everything bigger. Say I want to know if my time lapse has my script has done bad things. So if throttle weight was ever negative while I was shooting. So I put it in here and I say if throttle weight was below 0, then set variable failed, let's say timed out. I'm using so-called camel case when the first letter is small but all the others are capitalized. True, or let's say set it to 1. So if at a certain time in my variable dump I will see that there is a variable called timed out with the value 1, I will know that the throttle weight was negative at a certain point. Right, so now I'm looking at those variables and there is no timed out, it's not there. So it means the throttle weight was never below 0, and you can see the throttle weight itself is 3000 something, so basically we have a throttle weight of almost 4 seconds, so it's not negative. We can trick it to become negative if you change this 8.5 seconds to something, you know, really small, like 1 second. With the shutter speed that we have now there, it will definitely become negative. But point is, that is how it works. And another good thing about it, while I've stopped the script, let me run it again. And let me switch to the camera here. So the really good thing about this, like I've configured the script, everything works, I have it running, I taking a look at my variable dump, I can see that everything's correct. So this whole rig is completely autonomous now. I can go and disconnect from this Wi-Fi that I'm using there and connect to my normal Wi-Fi, or just disconnect from Wi-Fi completely and go do about my business, browse the internet, I don't know, do whatever I want to do. But my smartphone is not tethered to the camera, it's not occupied with whatever the camera is doing. Like, this is working on its own completely. I can leave it if it's in a safe place, I can leave it unattended for hours and it's just going to go and shoot its own time lapses. And then when I come back, I switch back to this Wi-Fi for the Raspberry Pi. I go back to this page and it should actually automatically reconnect. Yeah, it did. As you can see, it's already moving this green thingy. And if it doesn't, you can just go and refresh. There's a bit of a catch though. If you go and, yeah, let me show you this. Right. Not everything's perfect in the software yet. Like, if I go and choose some different script, like this new 23, which only has like 5 steps, but the script that's actually running there has way more steps, and the current step is something like it's not 5, definitely, yeah. Current step is 20. It doesn't highlight anything in here because you have the wrong script open. It's actually this one that's currently executing. So yeah, if you enable tracing and then you open a different script than the one that's currently running, the tracing will not give you, proper highlighting of the steps, because the steps are not there. You're looking at a different thing. It will still highlight the steps by the number. If I open, like, I don't know, day to night from Nikon, it will highlight step number 20 if there is a step number 20 in here, but it's actually not the one that's really executing. So this is a bit of a catch. But I don't know how to go about this, because usually I just don't go and open a different script while I'm running some script. So I don't see this as any serious problem. But in the future I might think of something to properly handle this. So this was the demo of the GPhoto2Server. Hope you liked it. It took longer than I expected. But anyway, I hope it was informative, so thank you for your attention.